Trails in the Sky is back, and it's better than ever. At least, that's what I was hoping to say. Unfortunately, this game is even better than better. It's like exceptional, outstanding, fantastic. What's another synonym for better? Yum yum. Trails in the Sky is yum yum. Write that one down. Trails in the Sky first chapter has been out for a little over 2 months as of the time I'm recording this. And as an ardent Liberalian enjoyer, I've had more than enough time to process how I felt about this remake and what it can offer for both new and veteran fans alike. As it is clearly apparent, I definitely enjoyed this game, but it still falls short in a couple of aspects, and I genuinely believe that there might still be merit in deciding which version of this amazing first chapter people should consider starting with. So let's take a look at both the good, the bad, and everything in between to see if Trails in the Sky first chapter ended up sticking the landing.
You did it, Estelle.
I'm not usually one to harp on and on about the graphics for video games, but for this title, I would say it is one of the biggest reasons people should play it. It's freaking gorgeous. I mean, look at it. The most recent entries of the Trails games, specifically the Calvard-based Daybreak games, have always looked exceptional. But Falcom has kicked it up yet another notch to give this remake both modern appeal and a touch of nostalgic charm. What hooked me on the art style immediately was the cel-shaded look of the models paired with this warm color palette in the environments of the game. Comparing this game with the most recent entry, it's clear that they didn't just take Sky and put it in the exact same engine. They tried their best to give it a distinct look and feeling. And I'd say they succeeded. While the transition from 2D character portraits to having full models convey all the emotion isn't perfect, all in all, these characters were still as engaging and interesting to look at. And the animations, cutscenes, camera work, all of it brings so many scenes to life. I know it's an overused statement, but seriously, every frame felt like a painting. A piece de résistance, if you will. On top of that, every single facet of this game was remade from the ground up, including the interiors of homes, all the caves and dungeons, and every single road down to the last stone tile. The cherry on top being they kept the scale pretty much 1-to-1. Never once did I think, this area seemed a lot bigger originally. Everything felt modeled and spaced quite deliberately. And what impressed me even further was the lack of load times between areas, which I believe is a first for the series. As long as it was outside, every town and settlement located in Liberl connected seamlessly to the roads. While the original game never suffered egregious load times between areas, it's little touches like this that help with immersion, and I'd say immersion is especially important with this game in particular. Now, the combat has shifted dramatically from the original, and when I say shifted dramatically, I mean it's literally nothing like how it was before. But that's okay, because this combat is fun and gives me the power fantasy of bonking people on the head with a stick. Gone are the days of tactical positioning and hours spent tweaking your orbments for White Gehenna. Sky First adopts not only Daybreak's action to turn-based style, but also a host of other mechanics from previous arcs to make a strange but effective amalgamation of a combat system. Every character sports a new and improved assortment of crafts with a huge emphasis on turn delay to steal bonuses from enemies, as opposed to only using S-crafts to get the job done. In combination with chain attacks, support abilities, and a new mechanic called Overdrive, which I still have no idea how this works, but it just does, your party is stronger than ever, and each fight feels like a puzzle for how to most effectively decimate the enemy before they even get a turn. I wouldn't say Sky First was the easiest Trails game either though. While it starts with the typical JRPG difficulty in the beginning, you know, the lack of gear options, limited abilities, and a small roster, but becomes easier over time, there were still more than a few bosses that could put up a challenge since they have all the aforementioned mechanics that the player does. Instead of Overdrive, however, they have something called a Rage Boost, which makes it so that they have lower delay on their attacks, improved stats, and crafts become unblockable. If you're not prepared for it, these moments can really take you by surprise. They've been slowly adding new ways for enemies to keep up with the player's strength since around Daybreak 2, with enemy S-breaks finally becoming a thing. And so I found this yet another welcome addition in terms of challenge. Especially since enemies in FC were kind of a joke on the intended normal difficulty, they didn't really have a way to counter the tools the player had or really challenge them in any significant way. They do keep one particular boss at a very similar difficulty to the original, you know, the one involving a certain swordsman, but I wouldn't say he was league stronger or weaker. Rather, the player just had a significant boost to their party strength. It isn't a cakewalk, but not nearly impossible. And I think that's an apt way to describe the overall challenge of this game, much better than the Cold Steel or Daybreak games, which frankly are a joke even on the highest difficulty. I do believe Rage Boost could use a bit of tweaking however, since having unblockable attacks might be a bit overkill, so it's not the perfect band-aid solution, but also not something I found to be an impediment to enjoying the game. But what I did find as an impediment to the game was the localization, or rather, the lack thereof. Let's talk about the
army's gonna arrest you for child abuse!
When it comes to localization of video games, especially these anime games, I know there are very strong opinions surrounding them. As for me, I genuinely don't really have strong feelings on it one way or the other. When it's done right, it's great. And when it's kind of shoddy, it can be a detriment. It's a case-by-case basis, and in this case, unfortunately, it's not amazing. Which is a shame, because I was trying my absolute best to look past the flaws. I'm not saying it ruins the game to an unplayable degree, but there were more than a few times where I was questioning why certain sentences or phrases sounded strange to me. Originally, Xseed were the ones heading up the localization of the first 3 Sky games, but for this title, a new publisher, Gung Ho, has taken the reins. And yes, I won't deny, I am very biased towards the Xseed script. I think it was hilarious, charming, and a wonderful translation from a Japanese to Western audience. The entire point of localization is to make a game that can be understood from a wildly different culture. And that not only includes translating the words, but making phrases, idioms, and most importantly, sentence structure make sense. The Xseed script is what latched me onto these games, and I realized they have taken heavy liberties with their version, especially so since I've been attempting to actually learn Japanese for the past year. I can hear the huge discrepancies, but it at least flowed together, it didn't interfere with the terminology of the world, and it didn't feel like just a literal translation. Which is what this Gung Ho localization feels like, a translation. And the most literal one at that. The characters are still fantastic, their personalities and quirks still shine through the script, but sometimes it can just snap you out of the experience when you have to do a double take to see if you read the line correctly or if you're just crazy. Yeah, but for now, we should head back to the guild and ask Gene how to proceed. I'm sure he'll know what to do. Yeah. What? We are? Not to mention the elephant in the room, the voice direction. And I don't mean the performances. No. I played both in English and Japanese, and they were both phenomenal. No, I mean the way that they pronounce certain in-universe terms, especially the country the characters are living in.
Did you go to the general store and buy me a copy of the Liberal News?
Are you the reporter from Liberal News?
Top-notch reporter for Liberal News, at your service. You're travelers from Liberal, aren't you?
It seems Zen came to Liberal.
This is a public service announcement. It's liberal. Liberal, not liberal.
So let me be clear.
And the fact I have been hearing people unironically call it liberal because this is their first Trails game makes me concerned for the future of Zemuria. Do you know why they made them say it like liberal? Because it sounds like that in Japanese, not English. We don't have to say it like that, just say liberal. Just another example of Gung Ho taking things from the base Japanese game and not giving it the attention it so desperately needs. Not everything is easily translated from one language to another. You have to make concessions sometimes. In an attempt to keep everything faithful, they've made certain aspects of this game confusing at points and just downright aggravating at others. I get that they might have been on a time crunch when they came to this game, but geez, does it show. It just seems like they didn't really care at certain points. And it's a shame because the one thing I absolutely loved were the new active voice sections where characters commented on in-game events. These are all new, entirely created for this game specifically, and they are hilarious. These felt in line with what Xseed was giving at the time, and I wish the entire game had that sort of attention to detail.
Hey, isn't this... Wait, do we have to go all the way to Roland to report this?
Calm down. We can do it at the Bose branch.
Ah, thank goodness.
Another thing I wish this game had, and This is gonna be the most hypocritical thing coming from a Sky FC fanboy, Mr. Loves the original so much. But the new content added to the remake was extremely minimal, and I found that a bit disappointing. Every chapter adds one new side quest, and that's it. It's not even voiced or anything. They range from these exist to pretty nice, and while they are a welcome addition, I was expecting a bit more. I understand they didn't want to shake things up too drastically and keep this as a faithful remake, but they could have given us a bit more to chew on. I think there were more than enough opportunities to give other supporting characters a chance to shine. This leads into my last point of probably one of the most important things for a Trails game, outside the story. Let's talk about the aspects I'm still mixed on. The music. It's fine. I didn't hate the soundtrack at all and was always a fan of the original to begin with, but this new arranged soundtrack is a bit lackluster. And by that I mean it doesn't really add anything new. I'll give it credit, there were a few tracks that were outstanding, and I found them to be potentially better than the original, namely being the fan favorite Sophisticated Fight. Ruon's town theme, I believe, got a bit of an upgrade. And I'm torn between the Zeiss theme because it was always perfect. But a lot of the music is kinda plain. Again, this is a very faithful remake, but a lot of the time I just didn't think the music stood out in a meaningful way, as if they were afraid of trying something new with music that's been out for like 20 years at this point. And there weren't too many new tracks either. In fact, I don't think there were any at all. FC already had a very selective soundtrack to begin with. Adding one little song wouldn't have ruined the experience or anything. I got to a point where I was comparing this game's soundtrack with the Evo version, the one notorious for its terrible music. And comparatively, I know it's sacrilege, but comparatively, I'd say Evo had a more interesting selection between the two. As an example, listen to the difference between Secret Green Passage. It's the small section at the end that feeds back into the beginning of the loop I found the most interesting. They could have added some flair to the songs in this game with small additions like that. But you know, despite these grievances, I still loved, and I mean absolutely loved, this game. It has shortcomings, yes, but this is a great remake all things considered. Now the question is, does this at all supplant what the original Trails in the Sky has to offer? Can a new fan find their footing with this game over the older versions? Before I finished this game, I would have said absolutely not. Once you finish FC, the chances of you jumping straight into the next game is practically guaranteed. But after finishing this game, I can pretty confidently say, yes, this is a very good place to start. Possibly the best place to start even. You might have difficulty working backwards through the series since this game has all the quality of life improvements and then some compared to the latest entries, but the storytelling is just so effective and enrapturing that I doubt it will be a hurdle for most people. I still encourage people to start with FC since there is a very neat subplot about technological development happening as you inch through the series chronologically, but the hardest part about getting someone to play Trails is getting them to actually play Trails. Sky First serves as the starting point. No confusing terminology or required reading to understand characters or references, just a strong story mixed with captivating visuals and addictive gameplay. Sky First won't replace FC, It works alongside it and the Evo version to give players a multitude of options to have the story of Liberl told in the way they want to experience it. And the best part is, no matter how many times they give this game an overhaul, it still hits just the right notes to give you one of the best stories told in gaming.